I think in 1947 there was a group called the English Teachers Group. All males, all surnames, port and cigars. Any fledgling bright young male English teacher they would snaffle. And it was created by a chap called Hone, who was the principal of Cranbrook, and A.W. Burt Stevens, who was to become under Wyndham the Deputy Director General for Secondary Schools. And both of them were upset and concerned at the animosity, the sectarianism between government schools and the non-government sector. And they decided that it might be a really nice thing to establish the English Teachers Group as a way of bridging so that it would be open to government and non-government school male-only teachers. But very talented women, particularly Phyllis Kitson at Sydney Teachers College, was affronted by this domination of the males running, the sort of semi-official English teachers professional group. And in 1960, starting in Victoria and South Australia, there was a movement to establish an Australian Association for the Teaching of English. So they wrote to the secretary of the English Teachers Group, setting out the terms of reference, and that was Jack Britton. And Jack and Phyllis were both at Sydney Teachers College. Jack showed it to Phyllis and she said, "Ripper, we've got it," because an essential component for New South Wales English Teachers Association would be male and female. It couldn't be all male. And so they established the English Teachers Association in 1960. Now, it was also a wonderful piece of timing because you've got the Wyndham report still sitting in 1957, they finished it, waiting for a government to have the courage to implement it. And of course, the other thing was the ETA put in a big formal submission to the committee preparing the HSC. So all of a sudden, not just for English teachers, there's this screaming need for what the hell are we going to do with this? And so that was a wonderful kind of recruitment agency for our association. People joined in droves. The ETA had provided a lot of professional development. Jerry Wilkes was wonderful, Professor Jerry Wilkes. He was the chairman, as I recall in those days, of the HSC Syllabus Committee. He travelled throughout New South Wales. ETA would be putting on meetings in Bathurst and Armidale and down the Riverina and every other place. Jerry would more often not go. He'd go there and he'd speak, because at that stage I think he was a patron of the Australian Association for Teaching of English. So the ETA arrived right at a crucial moment in the history of education in New South Wales, and it really, I won't say exploited it, but it led to an explosion. And every time there was a change, either in the examination format or a new syllabus, up would go our numbers.
The first business secretary was Joyce Moore. And people of my vintage and perhaps a little bit older would remember that all the documentation from the ETA came out of 96 Chandos Street, Ashfield. And that was where we held our council meetings. Joyce, again, was not an English teacher, but she was a great friend of Phyllis Kitson, and she had been asked to come. As a child, she'd had polio. I don't think she ever actually worked out in the general workforce, but she was just so committed to the ETA.
People who joined the ETA had to be made of stern stuff, especially those who got involved in the executive, because it was really hard work. We were a really tiny organisation, and yet the amount of output that we had was absolutely incredible for the size of the group. The executive was a very small group. The council had about 15, 20 members at the most, but they came from every sector. From the university sector, we had people like Rob Eagleson. He was absolutely consistent in his support, in his work, and it gave us a sort of feeling of substance to have people from that higher education sector.
I can remember in the early 1970s, membership of ETA was $8. I'm not quite sure how that compares with the current membership. And for that, people received their newsletters and they talked about them.
I ran a secretary's column in the newsletter each month as it came out. And that was you heard it here first. So you had to be on top of some of the issues as they were going on. You had your key contacts and you gathered information. I felt that that was a critical thing. Going out there to teachers in the bush or to members who didn't necessarily get to meetings, giving them what was new, what was breaking news.
You know, they would come into the staff room after there'd been a mail out and they'd say, "Did you get the newsletter? What did you think of this article? I could use that in my class." And actually I had a young teacher in those days who said, "I'd like to do an article on teaching 8E8 English in period 8 on Friday," and she did.
Our executive meetings were one of the things that I had to do. Handwritten, photograph stencil, would you believe? Pasted in a book. You know, that was the limit of the technology that was available to us at that stage. That was at the time when Robin McGuinness was president, and I have to pay tribute to Robin. She was an absolutely clear-headed businesswoman who set the ETA on a firm financial setting and guided us through. And she said, "I think we need to have a bank card facility."
Suddenly in 1980, Sydney was the site of a huge influx. 800 delegates from around the world came to that conference. Anybody who came to the conference could have engaged in conversations with people whose books of readings and thought they were studying in their university or teacher development courses. And there wasn't a sense of hierarchy.
In 1985, our 25th anniversary, was a very special time. We had our conference. My best memories of that time, I think, are of the conference dinner, where we said farewell to Joyce and John Moore in their retirement.
And we all felt we were on the edge of a revolution. We wouldn't have used the word revolution, but we all felt that we were transforming this tired, stale old practices of English teaching, where Monday was grammar, Tuesday was drama, Wednesday was short story, Thursday was something else, where kids were regurgitating, were summarising chapters of novels, 30 chapters long, write me 30 summaries of chapters, where it was chalk and talk, where it was just kids regurgitating, the stuff that Dorothy and Douglas Barnes showed us about the relationships which go on in classrooms. The Bullock Report, the best thing Margaret Thatcher ever did, she was a Minister for Education, was to commission Alan Bullock to do that magnificent study of English teaching in England. That had a big impact upon us as well. See, all these exciting things were going off all around us and we were in the midst of it, and we felt we were not religious, that's not the right word, but there was a sense of zeal, vocation. Yeah, zeal's the word.